All right, welcome everybody to your real estate podcast. This is episode number 5, I believe. A lot has been going on in real estate recently, right? We're talking the real estate lawsuit. We're going to discuss the verdict. Also, another thing that transpired was after that lawsuit, another lawsuit was filed, and we're going to discuss the verdict, what that means. We're going to talk about the housing market right now and everything that's going on. All right. So without further ado, let's get started. And how are you going to succeed? Let's talk about succeeding in real estate as a new agent, right? There's so many things: consistency, lead generation. How do you got to generate leads? Just having conversations is how you succeed. So we're talking about different ways, more than one way to skin a cat, right? Some people say this is the only way. You see all these gurus out there, they got their own. But guys, there's so many different ways to go about it. You just there's no one size fits all. But one thing across the board, you got to have conversation. You got to have conversations. I'm talking about whether it's with your sphere of influence, people you know, because you never know the people you know that may be looking to buy a house. An untapped thing that I've been considering that I haven't heard of, and I'll share it because maybe somebody can go after that business, but I've been thinking about it, is apartment complexes. So if you're getting any value from this video, make sure you like and subscribe. It would help the channel grow. The algorithm is telling me that over 90% of those watching are not subscribed. So please make sure you subscribe. Thank you very much. Most people are going to transition to become home buyers, probably live in an apartment complex. Is there a way to target apartment complexes? You know, it's kind of hard now with all these new constructions coming up where there's so many security codes to get in the complex. Back in the day, you can just walk up the stairs and drop flyers around. But so are there soliciting laws stopping people from doing that? These are things I'm thinking about. But I just thought about that. If you're looking for a buyer market, once you target where renters live, most of them are in apartments. So that's one way. There's just so many ways to do it. There's somebody that I know that succeeded just by door knocking townhouses, and people wanted to upgrade, sell, and over time, after 44 days or so of door knocking, the ball started rolling. Some people go down the cold calling method. Others do their sphere of influence. They're very social, got a large crowd and big organizations outside of real estate. They just put the word out there and it works. There's this one lady that sold a house, and I guess it was on a reality TV show in Atlanta. They sold a house to somebody major, and then that just steamrolled. There's this one gentleman with my company, Remax, that I was watching. He was able to sell one house to an athlete. Randomly ran into an athlete, sold the house. Then in his story, it hit his mind that, wow, I can make money in this area, and he just moved to that area, and then it grew from there. Now he's like one of the top, if not the top, luxury sellers in Remax. So you got having conversations, cold calling, door knocking, so many different ways, and staying consistent is a big thing. Following up, the follow-up game has to be top. But what I really wanted to talk about is just a mindset. And all these different avenues I just listed, I know people who have succeeded in all of them, but the only thing I can see that they all have in common is a mindset. A mindset of, I'm going to do what I put my mind to. And that comes in this field. It's a requirement, because here's the beauty of a 9-to-5. Let's go down this road for a second. The beauty of a 9-to-5 is you have to clock in. You're scheduled. If you don't show up, there are repercussions, right? You can get fired. There's a boss breathing down your neck. Company sets goals. So a 9-to-5 helps structure somebody's life. That's why companies like people who got bachelor's degrees or college degrees, whether or not it's in this field. What a 4-year plus degree tells a company is you are somebody that can see something through. If it's in your field, good, you know about what you're talking about. But if it's not, you may get a shot because it just shows you can stick with something, right? Now let's switch that to real estate. In real estate, you have to be that accountability source. You don't have a boss. You may have a broker that may require things of you, but if they push you too hard to where you're like, look, I got into real estate so I don't have somebody breathing down my neck, you can just move to another brokerage, right? A lot of companies are always recruiting, so you're not going to be out of work unless you do something unethical and get your license taken. But barring that, you don't necessarily have a boss. You eat what you kill, right? So you are your own boss. You have to be that source to motivate yourself. And that's why I wanted to focus on mindset. The mindset of accountability. So if you go to work and you don't do your job, they write you up, right? And then you can even get fired. You don't show up on time, you get an attendance write-up or occurrence, right? This is now all on you to structure your life as though it's a job, that if I don't show up, there's a penalty. If I don't do what I'm saying I'm going to do, there's a penalty. Also boils down to integrity. Integrity, a wise man once told me, is what you do when nobody is watching. And to take myself out of it, I'll just say the source of where that came from for me is just working a job. Why working a job? Because I was fortunate enough to get promoted, right? To where during the shift that I work, I was the highest authority in the building with about 300 associates. They all don't work at the same time, but sometimes 50, 60, depending on the day. Even though I got bosses, they weren't there like overseeing me. The buck stopped with me during my shift. And I got an office and all these associates. So now integrity is I can just kick my feet up in this office, fall asleep, and get a free check. But then productivity is going to drop. And also, let's say somebody sees that, then you lose your job, right? Integrity, you don't get to that point in the company. If you may get there, but eventually you're going to get exposed if you don't have integrity. When you don't have a boss breathing down your neck, watching over you, but you're able to get up and go do what you're supposed to do, that's integrity. You're going to need integrity in the real estate field. We're talking about ethics? No. Integrity, just self-accountability. You set yourself up and say, this is what I want to accomplish, and go about doing it. Obviously, for me, prior to me getting promoted, like I said, that came from working a job. I remember I used to tell my boss this at the time. You know, he'll have these meetings with managers. I was a junior level manager and want to grill me, and I would just kind of be honest with him. I said, with all due respect, I don't work for you, you know. Obviously, these big corporations didn't like when I say that, but I guess I didn't care. So I told them, you know, I'm a Christian, man, and I feel like whatever I do, God sees. I'm not perfect, but that's who sees me. You don't see everything I do. Half the time, you're probably in your office, you're off the floor, you're not in the building, you're doing your meetings. I have a higher power that sees everything I do, and I feel as though if I take your money and don't give you the day's work, I feel as though it's stealing, and I don't feel comfortable just stealing like that. You know what I'm saying? So I can take the coaching, but this breathing down my neck stuff doesn't really work, because honestly, I really don't work for you, you know? And over time, that person got to respect that, to where, like I said, I became at a position where I didn't have a direct supervisor looking over me or manager looking over me. That's just where the source of that came from for me. But another place, I'll share a personal story. Another place where that came from, I remember in my early 20s, maybe I was 21 or 22. I was at a community college, and I met this gentleman there. We had a couple classes together. It was just ironic. I was at Montgomery College, and for those that know, there's a shuttle that goes from one campus to the other, right? From Rockville to the Tacoma campus. And this gentleman and I were in the same class in the Rockville campus. Then we'll see ourselves ride the shuttle together and go to the Tacoma campus. So we built a relationship. We started talking, and we found out we had similar aspirations and things in common and goals. And he was working at the time at a car repair shop, right? Or I wouldn't say repair, it was like minor upkeeps on cars. And I at the time, I was working at a group home in DC, and we said, let's start this business together. But we needed money, and we were making enough at the time. I was making enough to just pay my rent and my tuition. He was living with his mom, but he was paying his own tuition and he was paying a car note. So he was making enough to pay his tuition and his car note. So I said, how about I put in a good word for you at my job. You work at my job is super chill. You know, you just sit down there really. It's a group home. You just make sure people don't leave the premises. You're just sitting down. So half the time you're watching TV or you're making sure they're doing their programs, and you give me a job at where you work at, and we can then make enough money to start this business. So that's what we did. He took me to his job. I got the job. I took him to mine and he got the job. Now we both worked the same 2 jobs, and he moved out of his mom's house. Like I said, I had been living on my own for a couple years. So now we're roommates, we're working, and we sat down, we wrote down how much we need to start the business. And I was very young, I remember, and it was a 6-month period. We locked in. We saved that money, started that business. And it was like a contracting business, right? We bought the van, we bought all the equipments, and then we kicked it off. Then I got fortunate at the group home where I worked. One of the managers there owned a house in the Bowie area, right behind the Bowie Town Center. So he took me there and he became my first client. And then I went around his neighborhood. It came to a point we had like 40 clients in that Bowie area behind the Bowie Town Center. And then we started having off-brand clients, one in Silver Spring, one in Riverdale, one in Hydesville. And we were doing well for ourselves at 20 something, to the point where I quit the jobs. But I'll say this much. One day I had a job. I'm going off a little bit. But anyway, just that mentality of setting a plan together, I never knew the benefit that would have for me over time. But that's what that ended up doing for me, is now looking at anything over time. Anything. I can just think back to when I was in my early 20s. Like, remember when you and dude put a plan together and you saw it through? I say that to say there's this mindset that needs to change as a real estate agent. And it may start with working out. Wake up this week. Just set a weekly goal of I'm going to work out, or I'm going to read a book, or I'm going to watch my diet, and accomplish that, right? Just see yourself accomplishing a goal that you want to set and conquer, and do that. Once you do that, now you know what you're capable of, right? Moving forward in life, it is so strong, and even that helped me so much. And when I first got into management, they put me in an area. We went from 12 million for the end of the year to 12.3 million. So that helped me tremendously, because the person I took over from had just gotten promoted, moved the business from 10 to 11 million or 11 to 12 million. Now we went up 300 grand. It wasn't a whole lot, but we were profitable. And then I got moved to another area, and just that mindset of I can do this helps so much. But you have to see yourself get it done the first time, to the point where now it became a gift and a curse. Wherever the store was underperforming at, I'm the guy they sent there to go put out the fire and turn it around. And it happened in different areas I went to. But that mentality of just remembering vividly my friend and I sitting down writing a plan. Now there's so much training on YouTube about that. Back then, YouTube wasn't a thing. YouTube kicked off maybe a couple years after that. So that was just, chance, God, whatever you want to call it, that allowed us to sit down and put that plan together, see it through. That has been one of the biggest factors in my life, and that mindset can help in so many different things, not only real estate, but whatever you want to put your mind to. And I think that is a very, very big goal in succeeding as a new agent. You have to develop the mindset of seeing something through, knowing in yourself that if I put my foot down, I'm going to get this done. And you may need to build that strategically over time until you get there. But whatever you do, you need to get there, because you don't have a boss. You're your own boss. And if you cannot get up and motivate yourself, you're going to fail. All right. Hope that was good. Hope you liked that. And if you got any questions, let me know. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions for you guys. Thanks for staying. And it was a 6.1% rate. And I was so happy for my buyer, because I kind of told them, lock in the rate. It was a new build, and the builder gave them the option of locking in their interest rates and also buying down some points based on how much they put down. And all that was done in the summertime. So they were able to get it at 6.1%. which was substantially high. They were apprehensive, didn't want to close the deal, didn't want to move forward. I said, go ahead and do it. If the interest rate goes up, you're saving. If it goes down, you just refinance. So either way, it's a win-win. Just go ahead and buy. If you are financially stable, you got your credit ready, just go ahead and pull the trigger, and you can always adjust based on how the market shapes out. So I was very happy when we closed and they were signing a contract for 30 years at 6.1%. Looking at the interest rates now, 30, yeah, that's their first home. So the FHA is 7.54, but the 30-year fixed is at a 8.3. So they still came out good, being that they made that move, right? 30-year fixed VA is at a 7.5. So they got in at 6.1. So they saved about 1.5 points, right, on the interest rates. And that adds up when you're talking about a purchase. Like we saw, the average in Maryland is almost 490,000, right? What was the average? The median price in Maryland is 465. But no, the median price is 399. The average price is 465. That's always confusing at times. Here it defines the average sales is the price weighed average of sale prices in the country, calculated by weighing the price of homes by the number of homes sold. That's the average. The price of homes versus the number of homes sold. The median price is just the middle value of prices sold in that period. So the month of October, we're looking at 399, but when you look at nationally and everything, it's 465. So when you look at that kind of loan, a percentage point, you're talking a lot of money over time, right? So it's I'm happy they were able to get that 6.1 interest rate, which is still substantially higher than what it was a couple years ago when we were paying 2.3% interest rates. But just talking to like some people that I knew that were in the game into real estate a long time ago, they're saying in the 80s, this 7 and 8 was like the average. It's normal, you know. When you talk a high interest rate, you're talking about 15%. So the builder was saying they had a buyer who they were trying to not rush, but trying to tell them lock in the rate. She was like, I'm not worried. She's older, retired, just trying to build her retirement home. She said, I'm not worried. When I was younger buying houses, my first home, I paid a 15% interest rate. So for somebody that paid a 15% interest rate, 8% seems like a steal. So we are freaking out in this market, but really this was the norm for a long time. High interest rates were in the 15s, the 12s, and the 10s. So it's still not bad to go ahead and buy. You got the 30-year fixed VA. We talked about that already. The jumbo rate 30 years at 7.80 with an APR of 7.82. All right. So something that the elephant in the room that everybody knows, So if you're getting any value from this video, make sure you like and subscribe. It would help the channel grow. The algorithm is telling me that over 90% of those watching are not subscribed. So please make sure you subscribe. Thank you very much. In Maryland, October 2023, the market is down 14.5%. Let me see if I can move this over a little bit. Yeah, the market is down 14.5%. Only 5,134 houses sold compared to last year, this time when 6,006 homes sold, right? The average price in Maryland is still going up. It's $465,816, almost $466,000 now, which is up 4.7% compared to last year when it was $444,982. All right, and the median price is $399,900, up 5.2% from $380,000 last year. And it's saying in Maryland, October numbers, the pending units were 5,629 units. last year you had 5,599, so it's up. Active listings are down, not too many people are selling. 10,023 homes were active in the month of October. Last year you had 12,585 homes on the market in the month of October, right? When you look at inventory level, they say it's at a 1.8. 2022 inventory was at a 1.6. Let's see brand new listings. New listings are down almost 1,000 homes from this time last year. Now they're 6,397. Last year it was 7,244. So all in all, the Maryland market is kind of similar to exactly what's going on in the national market. The prices haven't collapsed. If anything, they've actually gone up. However, they're not selling quite as fast, right? So that's something to think about. They're staying a lot longer on the market. There are fewer homes being listed and fewer homes actually selling, all right? Let's see what the interest rates are looking at. I actually closed on the home. When was this? On Friday. And interest rates are almost 8 point something, I don't know, but over 8%, the low eights, and there's a lot to discuss about that. I'm looking here at the housing market snapshot pending home sales. This is from the National Association of Realtors. It says index 72.6%. Midwest is at 74.3. This is the pending home sales, which is up 4.1% in the Midwest. The West Coast, we're looking at 55.3 month over month, which is down 1.8. The South is, we're talking about 87.1%, 87.1, which is up 0.7%. In the Northeast, 63.1. Northeast, 63.1, and that's up 0.8. Says an index over 100 coincides with a higher level of activity relative to 2001. So 2001 equals 100. So when you hear 72.6, it's telling you it's lower than 2001 as far as pending home sales, right? And that's month over month. How is that going? When we look at September, month over month, those are those numbers we were talking about. All right, latest housing indicators, just the general overview of the housing market. September sales, almost 4 million houses were sold in September. 3.96 million units were sold. The median price, $394,300. So a crash hasn't necessarily occurred as of yet. And the median price has been going up, because last time we talked, it was about 385,000. So that has gone up. Even though the interest rates are crazy, we haven't seen this crash yet. And there are questions as to why hasn't the housing market crashed. We have a couple factors and we're going to talk about that, but let's just run through these stats. September stats, at the start of September, we can see 1,358,000 homes. And then August, we had 675,000 homes. All right. Can look at the existing sales. Just a quick snapshot. All these stats again is from the National Association of Realtors. It says September sales, we already went over that, 3.96 million. Month over month, it's down 2%. From August to September, it's down 2%. Year over year, when you consider this time last year, the amount of homes sold is down 15.4%. That is very substantial. So even though the median price is $394,300, year over year, that is up. So the housing market, as far as the price of your home as a homeowner, has still gone up, average almost 3%, 2.8%, right? However, the sales this time last year is down 15.4%. So when you see the housing market slows down by 15.4%, you wouldn't think there's a crash and the prices of the home should be really low, but that hasn't really happened as of now, right? And we're going to talk about what this means for buyers and why is this happening. Well, the main reason why is So let's look at the latest housing indicators, all right? Things haven't really changed since the last time we spoke, but we'll just review it one more time. It's saying 3.7 million units were sold, and the median price nationally is at $391,800. And that shows that the housing market hasn't crashed yet completely or at all. The prices of homes are still going up, but the problem is they're not selling quite as fast, all right? Not selling quite as fast, but they haven't crashed all the way yet. And when we take a look at the pending sales, let's just look at the Northeast where we are. Month over month, it's up by 2.7% as far as the price, right? I mean, the pending home sales. And in the South, the month over month is actually down 85.6. It's down by 1.9%. So the Northeast is the hottest market in the country right now, and that's where we are. Well, technically, we're right on the borderline, so we're actually in the southern market if they look at it that way. Maryland is actually the first state that they deem to be south, and that's down 1.9%. The Northeast, you're talking about New York and all those in the corner, right? Boston, Massachusetts, all of those states up there, New England, and they're up 2.7. So the Northeast is the hottest market. The Midwest is down. The West is actually performing the worst right now. There was a time when the West was a very hot market, but now for some reason a lot of people are moving out of California. It's down 6%. Pending home sales are 51.8, down 6% month over month. Arizona was a hot market. A lot of people were moving to Arizona, California, but now the West is not doing quite as great. We'll see. Keep an eye on that and see if that lasts or if that's just a passing thing, right? Existing home sales month over month are down 4.1%. Year over year, down 14.6%. That's pretty huge. The median sales price year over year is up, as I mentioned, to $391,800, and that's up 3.4%. So I would say the market, as I mentioned, the market hasn't crashed yet. We saw in the last month 3.79 million. What this means for buyers and why is this happening? Well, the main reason why it's happening is just really the inventory levels. Inventory is not as high as, let's say, supply and demand. The more houses you have, the cheaper they are. The fewer houses you have, the higher it is because more people are trying to get those houses. So even though the interest rates are high, the reason why the sales have dropped is fewer and fewer people are qualifying for these loans. And you do have the houses, some are selling. However, fewer and fewer people are qualifying, right? So there are a few things I wanted to talk about as far as if you're a home buyer, what does this mean for you, right? You can negotiate the price. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Because if fewer homes are selling, that is something you can use as a negotiation tool and say, you know, you don't want to go say that, but, you know, the seller would know if their house is on the market for an extended period of time, they will be more inclined to like take a deal, right? So you need a good realtor, or if you can do it yourself, you just want to negotiate. Don't pay the initial asking price, not in this market. Secondly, we can say buyers can look for seller concessions right now. So you can ask the seller for seller help. Just include that in your offer, or just, you know, ask them if they're going to help you with closing costs, things of that nature. And for first-time home buyers, something to consider is there are a lot of first-time home buyer programs, right? And when the market was hot, a lot of sellers didn't want to deal with that, right? So if you had all these programs backing you up, they're just going to say, oh, I'm okay, and just go with somebody who has the cash or who's already qualified to go. However, for a first-time home buyer, this is great for you because sellers, if a seller's home is on the market 1, 2, 3, 4 months, 5 months, they'll take a deal. They'll work with first-time home buyer programs. So all you got to do is get your income up, your credit up, and just look in your locale and see what first-time home buyer programs are out there. And sellers may be even willing to take multiple programs to get you in that house and get their property sold. So I hope that works for you guys. we'll keep on going. All right, so what does this mean for sellers if you're trying to sell your home in this market? I would just say your home might take longer to sell. That's the average. So the National Association of Realtors and a couple big firms lost the lawsuit, and the verdict was they were liable to pay 1.7 billion in damages, and there's what's called a treble, so 3 times more in actual cost of like damages, just for like, as a, you know, normally say pain and suffering, but just all the extra damages, it says, can be trebled or tripled under U.S. antitrust law to more than $5.3 billion. So that was a lawsuit in Kansas. It says homes in Missouri, Kansas, and Illinois between 2015 and 2022 who objected. This is from Reuters, who objected to the commissions they were obligated to pay by a broker. So in essence, the sellers said we paid for the buyer's broker, you know, or the buyer's agent, which was the norm. And honestly, I don't want to pull it up, but in the contract for Maryland here, it is stated, you know, when you sign a listing contract, you're telling the seller, and they're signing it, I'm charging you a 6% commission fee, and I'm going to keep 3%, and I'll pay the buyer's broker 3%. That was an incentive almost for that person to come and purchase. But now the verdict is out in Missouri and Kansas and Illinois, and they say that violates antitrust laws. It's been appealed. I believe the NAR, National Association of Realtors, the CEO stepped down, I believe, but he said it was being appealed. And I can read the New York Times here. It says, in the class action suit, a federal jury in Missouri ruled that the National Association of Realtors and several real estate brokerages had conspired to fix prices by setting a standard where sellers pay the listing agent a commission. So they're saying it was a conspiracy. Most invariably 5 to 6% of the sales price that is split between the buyer's agent. So what they're saying, just in all fairness and in all transparency, what they're saying is there's some behind the scenes conversation between the buyer's agent and the seller's agent to set a price, and they get paid. So it's not necessarily an open market. The consumer's best interest is not in mind with these type of deals. That's what they're insinuating with this verdict, in essence. But from my experience, it was just a norm. So there's no phone call that you get from another agent conspiring to fix a price. Honestly, you've already put up the price prior to even getting any buyers. So there's no conversations. But like I said, in order to be fair, let's say if you list your buyer's agent commission at 3% and somebody else lists their buyer's agent commission at 2% or 2.5%, you can kind of see how the buyer's agent saying, I can get 3% of commission here. I will steer my clients to focus on this property because I get to know how much I'm getting paid, and the buyers necessarily don't get to know that, right? So you can kind of see how there's a gray area. The only danger in that is this opens a can of worms for all practices across the board. It's like you're a lawyer, you signed a contract with a client, they read everything, they agreed to it, and now they sued you. It's like, you know how that saying, read the fine print? That doesn't matter anymore. It's not really in fine print. It's in, at least on the Maryland contract, it's as legible as every text. It's not even like smaller, where it indicates how much I'm getting paid and how much the buyer's agent is getting paid. So there's no fine print necessarily to read. It's just a lot. You're selling a house, so the contract is a few pages long, but you want to read it honestly. At times I need to highlight these things to the seller so they're aware, and honestly their initials and all signature requirements in most of these lines in the contract to where they know what they're getting into. So it's like, now you've signed a contract, then it doesn't matter anymore. That's the can of worm here. That's the danger in this. I can see an avenue for this being overturned, but at the same time, you know, there are going to be ramifications moving forward. So we're going to discuss that. What are some of the dangers, right? Like moving forward with this lawsuit, what are some of the challenges? You can say for the buyer, buyers, now as a buyer, you may have to pay your own commission, right? And that's another thing now. Some buyers are even suing, which is kind of shocking when they were the ones likely to benefit because they weren't paying commissions for the most part. But here's the danger. I can kind of see why some buyers are suing, because like I said, if some sellers are offering a 3% commission to a buyer's agent, other sellers are offering 2%. Some buyers may state, I never got to see the best properties. Who knows? Because of this commission split thing between agents, I may have been steered towards a house that I wasn't aware of, I wasn't interested in, or wouldn't have been my first choice, whatever. So you can kind of see where there's some gray area there. And I was just being all the way transparent. But moving forward, what this verdict means, it's almost a $2 billion lawsuit, and there's what's called a treble, where the damages can be tripled, as far as it can then go to upwards of $5 billion, right? This means that for buyers, you may have to pay your own commission, just hands down. You got to pay your own commission. So the buyer's agent now would have to require it, because why is somebody going to show you properties, go around driving, file all the contracts for you, do all the negotiation? They're going to need to get paid. And if the sellers are not going to be paying that commission anymore, as a buyer, you're going to have to take up that cost. So that means your closing cost is just going to be higher. Now, if you're buying a new home, you only got to pay 3.5%, a little bit of fees here and there to the title company, and maybe 1 or 2 inspections, things like that, if you're a first-time home buyer. But now you got to also add maybe a 3% commission, possibly 2%. So that can even slow the housing market down a little further. Or buyers may go directly to sellers now, which can be good, or can open them to not necessarily getting the best deals, because if you're a buyer, you're going to negotiate with an expert agent who has been doing this for a while. 9 times out of 10, they might get a better deal for their seller. So the buyers are at a disadvantage here, from my point of view at least. Things are just going to change, but this was only in those 3 areas. The danger now is, right after that happened, there was another suit filed in South Carolina. So this is just it's like a money grab now. Everybody is going to start filing suits all across the country until things get reset, as far as laws get reset and new standards get put in place, which may be a good thing overall, to where it cleans up the market. I hate to say it, but it's kind of like the biggest secrets in real estate. You got some very unqualified people. Some potential clients have told me this. A gentleman was upfront and blunt with me. Look, man, I'm into sales, but some of you agents are the lowest of the low, and we had a great conversation. Over time, people can sense how genuine, or at least serious, you are with your business, and then they'll be honest with you and tell you their nightmare stories they've had with agents. My sister had a bad story. When I purchased my first house, prior to me becoming an agent, I had a bad story with an agent as well, and that all kind of factored into why I became an agent. I just know what I don't want to go through, what I don't want to put somebody else through. Just the lack of communication, the transparency. It's like they just want to sign the contract, lock you in, and then go about their day. Everything else you got to figure out on your own, which is not what an agent is supposed to do. If you are a professional, you're very busy with a lot of things. This agent is supposed to do all the groundwork for you, So you being a professional and doing all the groundwork and then also paying a commission can be frustrating. So maybe a lawsuit like this, if it doesn't blow up the industry completely, can just reset the market to where you got professionals doing the job now. I'll read this from Yahoo Finance. It's a bit long. I'll try to skim through it. It says a new federal class action lawsuit filed in South Carolina alleges that the powerful National Association of Realtors and real estate brokerage firm Keller Williams violated federal antitrust law. So this one is targeted at NAR and Keller Williams. And they said powerful. The reason why it's kind of powerful is, I'm a realtor. I'm a part of this organization, but NAR has some strong lobbyists in Capitol Hill that you know, can help when laws get made. You know, it's kind of, they're nowhere as close to the NRA, right? But you hear all the things about gun violence and all these things, and you wonder why laws don't get passed for those who want them passed. And for those who are advocate of gun rights, they lobby hard, you know? So politicians can kind of stay on their side when it comes to these judgments. That's the beautiful thing about having branches of government, because even though you may lobby, a judge can overrule that, and that's what happened in this case. Anyway, I digress. It says Keller Williams and NAR getting this suit. It says they violated antitrust laws and in turn artificially inflated home prices in the state. So this is particularly for South Carolina. This lawsuit may not have a lot of weight in every state or every county, because some counties and states are very highly regulated, and maybe they had already put in laws in place where these things were not transpiring, so you may not even have a claim in certain areas. But other areas, if it was the Wild Wild West, then this may be a way to reel it in. It just doesn't make sense at times when you sign a contract and now you're saying, oh, I didn't know what I signed. You know, so these are things now that's it can escalate all the way up to the Supreme Court, where how much are you responsible for your decision to sign a contract? Does that not carry any weight? You can just change, you know. Anybody cannot be liable for contracts. This in essence can make a lot of contracts null and void. Any contract, buying a home, marriage, anything, you signed it. Oh, I didn't know, I wasn't, you know, I felt wronged on this. I need to get paid. So it sets a bad precedent. That's my only gripe with this, because I don't think people are blindsided. At least it's there in the contract. I communicate these things, so I don't know. Anyway, it says the damages in the case for the treble or triple damages, meaning that the judge could require the defendants to pay up to $3.5 billion. It's talking about the old case. Anyway, that old case was against certain different firms. It says the South Carolina plaintiffs are seeking a class action law status on behalf of all home sellers in the states who since November 2019 used a listing broker affiliated with Keller Williams that listed their homes on NAR's multiple listing service. So if you listed your home on the MLS, they're coming after you, right? Not you personally, but all of that is what they're trying to compile into this lawsuit now in South Carolina. All right. We're going to switch gears now and talk about Annapolis, Maryland, and just the housing market in Annapolis. It says in October 2023, median listing price for homes in Annapolis was $650,000. So Annapolis is one of the most affluent areas in Maryland. Hence, the price is way above the national average, even way above Maryland's average, right? Maryland's average is year over year, 465. In the month of October, 399. This is almost 650, almost double that, right? Trending up 3.2% year over year. So the prices of homes in Annapolis have gone up. The median list home price per square foot is $307 per square foot. In Annapolis, Maryland, the median home sold price is $635,000, right? So couple reasons why Annapolis is so expensive or affluent. Let's say if you're moving to Annapolis, right? It's sparsely populated compared to other cities in Maryland, right? When you think about Baltimore and then Annapolis, it's a very small city compared to that, but it is the capital of Maryland. There's this little article here in Google that says from its earliest days as a colonial capital city. So in essence, the capital city of America was in Annapolis, right? And then they bought DC and they moved there, right? And DC was that, you know, part of Maryland technically, and then it got made into a capital, right? It says from its earliest days as a colonial capital, Annapolis was also known as the Athens of America. Now Boston kind of has that title as well. But you can kind of see it when you walk down main streets in Annapolis. You just got this old cultural vibe, right? It says a glittering social season, gracious hospitality, and intellectual stimulation. So when you walk down the main street, just the vibe, I'll try to put some videos up on the background so you can see what I'm talking about. And it has a nice kind of European feel, right? And also, if you like the water, it's excellent for you. It's actually known as the sailing capital of America. And in the summertime, I went to Annapolis, just the docks, right? The boats were everywhere, coming and leaving the docks. It was crazy, thousands of boats. So I never knew that living in Maryland all this time, as far as it's called the sailing capital of America, but I can see why. I saw a ton of sailboats out there. I had to be about 1,000 or more. Some leaving, some deep in the water, some were all docked, and you know, it's kind of beautiful, right? And right by that area there's a Naval Academy, and sometimes when I go down Annapolis in that area, you would just, the first time I went down there, I thought there was some kind of... So if you're getting any value from this video, make sure you like and subscribe. It would help the channel grow. The algorithm is telling me that over 90% of those watching are not subscribed. So please make sure you subscribe. Thank you very much. Graduation or something, you just saw all these sailors out there with their white suits and everything white, you know, just everywhere. But that can be a norm on a Saturday or Sunday when they get out the academy and just walk around. So it's very beautiful. The Annapolis docks are there, historic, very historic, and that's where the current governor of Maryland was sworn in, and he's an African-American guy, and you know, that kind of raised eyebrows there, but he was saying he wanted to get sworn in at the docks, you know, because that was a slave hub at one point. So for his ancestors to come in as slaves right on those docks, and now he's the governor of Maryland, it was a symbolic statement for him, is what he said about that. But obviously that ruffled feathers, depending on who's the listener and their point of view, right?
When we had our inauguration, I immediately, and I was very intentional about starting our inauguration down at the Annapolis docks when I was inaugurated to become the governor. The Annapolis docks was one of the oldest slave ports in the history of the United States. And we did a wreath laying, and then we marched, a couple hundred people marched from the docks up to the State House, where I was sworn in to become the 63rd governor. And immediately when people said, well, he's starting his inauguration, he's starting his governorship with indoctrination, that's not indoctrination. It's history, and it wasn't done to make people feel bad. It was done in a way of making all of us feel empowered about look where we've come from and look where we are now.
Also, the iconic Chesapeake Bay Bridge is right there by Annapolis. There's a World War II memorial. You know, in Washington, D.C., obviously, there's the World War II memorial for the nation. But in Annapolis, Maryland, right there by the Naval Academy and all of those things, you kind of have the World War II memorial for soldiers from the state of Maryland that passed away in that war, you know, and similar to the Vietnam memorial in DC, where there's a granite wall with the names of fallen soldiers. In DC, similar to that, you got these tablets with names of fallen soldiers and then a nice star. So it's just a historic site, very affluent, great place to live. There was a house that sold in Annapolis not so long ago, a mansion right by the water for 6-point-something million. The agent that got over $180,000 commission just off that one sale of that property, you know. Takes a lot to kind of break into a market like that, but it's super affluent, and people are paying those prices easily, right? So you got the Sandy Point State Park, which it's like a beach, but when you're there, you can kind of see the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. You can see ships and boats going in and out of the bay. And you got the Broadneck Park. You got a lot of parks, but there's the Broadneck Park, which has like, it's just a park, right? But it's pretty big. You got walking and bike trails. There's a football field, I think, a soccer field, a lot of stuff there. It's very nice for your family on a Sunday or Saturday just to go, you know, hang out, take the kids out there. And with that name, that Broadneck Park, you got the Broadneck High School. I wasn't too familiar of that, but my niece actually graduated from one of the Anne Arundel County schools. Annapolis is in Anne Arundel County, and she graduated from one of the schools in Anne Arundel County, and it was Meade, not Broadneck. So she's right by Fort Meade, so she graduated from the Meade school over there. And I took her to a listing I have in Annapolis, and she was helping me get it ready for a showing. And she was like, "Oh, it's right by Broadneck High School." And she said, "You need to include that on the listing." I was like, "Why?" And she said, "Oh, well, they get all the funding in the county, so it's a public school." But apparently, that's when I went to look into it. So apparently, they get a lot of funding compared to her high school. And sometimes it may be, it just is what it is. When you live in a more affluent area, that school is going to get more money based on the taxes being paid in that locale. But also, when I went to look into it, I drove by the school, I looked it up. You can see all the Under Armour banners when you're driving into the school, right? And we know Under Armour, their founder at least, graduated from the University of Maryland. So for him to sponsor one of the Maryland, I know they sponsor a bunch of Maryland schools, but Broadneck is one of them. So you can also imagine, it's like the Oregon Ducks, right? If you're talking football, you know, all their jerseys and everything based on the fact that Phil Knight, the CEO of Nike, went to Oregon, right? So it's like the Maryland Terrapins now, they get a lot of Under Armour gear because the CEO of Under Armour went to Maryland. So that, you can just imagine that on the high school level, they'll get a lot of gear just from Under Armour and things like that. So just a nice point I thought my niece pointed out to me while I went to go check it out, and I'm like, oh, interesting. So you got a lot of good schools and stuff like that. What does that mean if you're selling in Annapolis? As we already read the numbers. It's one of those markets where houses will sell, but don't get it wrong. If you overprice your home, it's not gonna sell, regardless if it's Annapolis. You know, doesn't matter. The interest rates are too high, so when people, they might want that house, but when they go talk to the bank, they may not qualify for it. So bottom line, price the home correctly. There are a lot of disclosures, and Arundel County got their own disclosure forms. If you're selling for sale by owner, you got to keep all those things in mind, but normally your agents will take care of all those things. Curb appeal, price it right, blend colors, color that can appeal to a lot of people, and make sure the house is move-in ready. You know, you don't want to spend an average of $650,000 to buy a house and then go into repairs. You know, I know some people don't mind when you talk about houses in that price range now, $1 million homes. People can kind of afford it, but really people don't want to spend that much and then go into a project, you know, unless they're an investor. 9 times out of 10, when they spend that much, they just want to move in and go about their business. So houses are still selling in Annapolis, but some are still on the market for an extended period of time because they're just not priced correctly. The price is what dictates the market, not what you think your house is worth. It's what the market says your house is worth. Homes that are priced correctly fly. Homes that are not sit on the market for an extended period of time. So don't get gritty trying to exploit the market now. It's just not the time anymore. When interest rates were low and there were multiple buyers trying to offer your house, you can start a bidding war and get what you want. But right now, buyers got options, right? Because homes are not selling that much. So price it correctly and you should be good to go. Well, we're going to move on. All right. So we're going to talk about how to become a real estate agent in Maryland. Got a few questions about that, so I'm going to try to answer that. First, you got to pass the national exam and the Maryland state exam, right? So first, just register for a course. You got I'm not going to say who to sign up with, so no free sponsors here. But anyway, sign up. You can look up their in-person courses. There are online courses just based on what fits your lifestyle, right? And some agents, some like organizations offer that course. Organizations such as like real estate organizations, for instance, SMAR, like the Southern Maryland Association of Realtors, they may not offer the course, but they have partners. So just look into that. Take the course. It's going to cost you about $350 to $400. That's what the course is going to cost. So take the course, and based on whether you take it online or in person, there might be different requirements, right? And then you got to do a practice exam, PSI practice exam. Back when I took mine, there was a lot of virtual stuff going on, which can still apply now, or you may have to go in person and take that exam, right? If you're taking it virtually, obviously you're going to have to pick up your camera, zoom around the room. They're going to ask you to zoom under the table, zoom behind the chairs, zoom on the walls all around you, just to make sure you don't have any cheat sheets anywhere. So be mindful, and zoom on the floor as well, where you're taking that exam. But if you're going in person to go take the practice exam, you don't have to worry about that, right? Don't know what that's gonna cost. Maybe a few dollars, $20, $30. I'm not too sure. Maybe $20 or so, or $10. I don't know. But the actual fee to take the exam, once you pass the practice exam, is going to be about $44. And that's an in-person exam at a location. They'll let you know where to go take it. I think it's, if my memory serves me correctly, it's about 110 questions for real estate agents, most of which are going to be your local. And then the national, let me see if I can look it up really quickly. It's been not that long, but I don't remember all of the details. Let's see, it's 110 multiple choice questions, right? I think about 30 or so of them are national, and then the rest is state, or the other way around. Either way, that's what it's going to be. And then it's a 2-hour exam, all multiple choice. You have to pass it with a 70% or higher. If you fail any portion, if you fail the national, you got to go back and take the national. If you fail the state, you go back and take the state, but all of them combined and you're good, right? 2 hours in length, and you get your results. When you get your results, you can then try to find a broker. Maybe I'll do a separate video on finding the right broker. But a lot of things you may want to consider is location. Do you want to work from home? Do you want to be in the office? How close is it to you? Do you want a brand name? Do you want a boutique broker that's local in your area? The cost, the commission splits is like one of the last things I would like people to focus on, because if you get 100% of your commission, but you don't get any transactions, 0 of 100 is 0, right? So if you're paying a 60-40 commission split, but you're getting a lot of transactions, then that's way more than if you're getting all your commissions, but not getting any deals. So commissions really, until you get going, don't put your mind on that. Set your mind on where you can go and succeed is what I'll say, right? Like I said, I'll probably do a separate video for that. But let's talk about the fees and the cost, right? So as I mentioned, the class about $300 to $400 based on where you register. You got a $44 fee for your exam. Separate exam might cost, like the practice exam might cost a little bit less than that. You got association fees. So for instance, you got the Prince George's County Real Estate Association, you got Maryland, Anne Arundel County, you got SMAR for Southern Maryland. Different areas, different associations, but they all are going to ask a different fee. So based on where you are, the fee might vary, but you're looking at $800 to $1,000 or so annually. Might be a little higher in certain areas, might be a little less in certain areas. So you want to look at what locale you are, who you want to partner with. It doesn't matter if you have one with SMAR, you can sell real estate all over the state of Maryland. So it doesn't matter if you're in Baltimore County, it doesn't matter really, but it's better to be affiliated with an association close to your office or where you live, right? Then the Bright MLS fees. I don't remember, if my memory serves me right, if there's an upfront fee to sign in, might be, but I know there's a quarterly fee, which is about $125. So every quarter you got to pay $125. So keep that in mind. Then office fees. So when you sign up with a broker, some brokerages got an initial fee. Some call it a technology fee, where they're going to do your websites, your business cards, name tags, all these things, and also a sign up fee for all those things I just mentioned. A few brochures, trainer, if you know, certain like agencies offer you a coach or a mentor to work with you for your first 5 transactions. So all those, they got to get compensated kinda. So all those fees as an initial fee, right? But there's also a monthly fee that varies from $0 to $250 or $300 a month, right? Monthly fee. And you got a quarterly fee with the MLS, right? Which is the multiple listing service, where agents can see a lot more details than Zillow and Redfin that the public has access to. Then personal advertisement, that depends on you. So with all that, I would say you're looking at about $1,700, but just extra fees, as I mentioned, your initial startup, personal advertisement to kind of get you going, you're looking at $2,700, around that, close to $3,000. That's just to get in the door. Then you got your monthly fees. So if you're paying all these monthly fees for months and you're not getting transactions, most people quit. Like the attrition rate is astronomical in the real estate industry. Because one thing I found out with business, what stops the business from operating is cash flow. Regardless of what business you're in, right? If you have cash flow to kind of pay your bills, the business is going to keep going. You may not be profitable. You can see these startup companies, they invest $40 billion and they're only making a million, 100 million a year. It takes them a while to kind of break even and get that money and then start churning a profit. But if they have some kind of cash flow, they can keep the business going. People only file bankruptcy and operating businesses if most of the time, if cash flow isn't coming, you can't pay your overhead. So your overhead in this industry would be your office fees, your monthly dues, and all these fees from these different organizations that are required either monthly, quarterly, or annually, right? So if you don't have transactions to keep that, then that's when most people quit. All right. So if you're getting any value from this video, make sure you like and subscribe. It would help the channel grow. The algorithm is telling me that over 90% of those watching are not subscribed. So please make sure you subscribe. Thank you very much.